I want to go over a few things before we actually get into the ceremony itself, the pre-ceremony. In pre-ceremony, the biggest thing we actually make sure we pay attention to is miking the groom and the officiant. Now, every once in a while, you'll have a groom that's a little reluctant to wearing a mic for whatever reason. What you need to inform them of is that you need to say, I understand your position on this and totally fine if you don't want to wear it. However, for us to capture the best quality audio, I highly advise you wear it. Now, the reason why I started with this is because it is critical we get the audio on this point. Now that they're mic'd and they're good to go, it's a good time to get some good establishing shots of the venue. Anything that's picturesque and can kind of establish where they're at. The next thing you need to think about in terms of shots while you're waiting for the big moment to happen are some just general details like the flowers, runners, chairs, the arch, or any type of miscellaneous decor. Sometimes the venue or DJ will have an audio set up. You can plug our H5 recorder into it and record directly from their feed. And it's a simple matter of just going up to them and asking. We'll go over in a different video a little bit more about audio, how to mic someone, and as well as how to plug in the H5 into another source. As the ceremony is beginning, do remember this rule. Shoot the ceremony in full, non-stop, and starting unless you have an issue. Now we'll go over what the processional entails. Now the second shooter, focus on the wedding party, especially as they're coming down, and then focus on the groom. Make sure you do not miss that moment when the groom sees his bride. The first shooter will be near the aisle, watching everyone come down with the gimbal. Make sure you capture the bride, especially when she's walking down the actual aisle with her father or whomever. Now let's focus on the second shooter. Make sure you start to tighten things up a little bit, especially on the groom as he's looking at his bride. Then make your way around to the bride camera and tighten that up on her face so that way we can capture her moment as well. Now the first shooter, it is your job to get some creative shots in this moment. And of course, being that back camera. Do clarify what the rules are of where you can and cannot go. If you have freedom to go wherever you can, move around as much as possible. Be cognizant of the photographer and of course our shooters and cameras. I encourage you to walk as close as you can down the aisle, capture some good moments, especially when they kiss. Do make sure you make room for the photographer. Again, communicate with the photographer on where you're going to be so that way you're not in each other's shots. Now this was more for a standard ceremony in which you have a little flexibility. So if you're in a Catholic ceremony, they typically want you on stationary cameras. Do verify that just in case, so that way you're not getting anyone upset. On Catholic ceremonies, the first shooter will assume the bride camera and do as tight of a shot as he can. The second shooter will focus on the groom and get as tight as possible on the groom. Those are the things you have control over. Now, at this point, you should have a rear camera. That'll be playing before any of this starts. One of the tricky things with Catholic weddings is that you'll have the officiant say a few things, and usually the bride and groom are off to the side just sitting and observing. Now, it depends on who has the best angle here, and who makes that decision first is the first shooter. Second shooter, it's your responsibility to look at the first shooter's position on the camera, where he's pointing it, and then focus the opposite way. So for example, he may be focusing on the officiant talking, so he clearly has his camera pointed that way. In this case, focus on the bride and the groom. Now, if it's the other way around, just be cognizant of that. Again, watch your first shooter. Now, let's talk briefly about Jewish weddings. Jewish weddings can be a little tricky. The tricky part of that is the signing of the ketubah. That can be done actually before the wedding or after the wedding. So make sure you find out when that's going to happen. Usually you could find that within the actual timeline itself. Jewish ceremonies will have quite a few different things going on. 7 blessings, typically that's done either by the officiant or the siblings if there's enough. And now a key part of a Jewish ceremony is the crushing of the glass. First shooter, that's typically your job to make sure that you get as tight as possible shot of that moment. Second shooter, make sure you have a medium wide so you can see the groom actually doing it. Now we do shoot other types of ceremonies. which can be Persian weddings or any type of Indian wedding. Do make sure you communicate with any type of coordinator or point of contact on where your placement should be. The big thing you're gonna have to remember about this is be flexible and be adaptable. Now that the couple have tied the knot on their best day, let's move into the funnest part of the day for both us and them, where we capture the formals and the reception.